Hello, my name is Milorad, and today we're going to be discussing Early Age Machaka. Uh, they got some changes from Dominions 5. Not as much, I think, as Middle Age Machaka, but there's still some changes, an addition of the new Glamour Path. So, what this video is going to be is comparing uh, Machaka from its previous version, as well as some new considerations for new spells and new blesses. This is not intended, just like my other videos. This is not intended to be a national overview or how to play them. Um, Rather, just discussing the changes. Okay, so we're gonna first talk about economy and scales, and then units, mages, and then go into some of the spells. Okay, so first, unlike many of the other nations, you don't have really any scales that go above the 2 except for heat. If you take up 3 heat, in summer you will go over to heat 4, and this can cause population loss because you do not have the forts that protect the population the way that Abysia does and some other ones. That being said, it's only for part of the year. As far as pretenders, you have, I counted 9 different options to give you +1 growth. Only one will give you +1 in production, but that does not really matter because you're not really a production heavy nation. 3 of them give +1 in luck and in magic, and 2 of them give +1 in luck. And then 7 give +1 in growth. So you have a lot of options to increase your scales. However, the scale changes I think impact you less than some other nations because in my opinion they were never a troop heavy nation in terms of resources and recruitment points. Perhaps now there is more argument to do recruitment points high and low production because you have new utility for some units that you would previously not use. Talking specifically about the War Lion, but we'll talk about that when we get to the units. Okay, so yeah, as I was saying, I don't think that the scale changes from Dominions 5 to 6 matter that much compared to like other units that are, like for example with Shinuyama or some of the other ones that were really severely impacted, I think, by the change to the scales system in Dominions 5, going to Dominions 6, I mean. Okay, so let's look at the units and what has changed. So the Pygmy, they used to be able to put 6 in a square, and now it's only 5. The other change is because of strength scaling. These archers are more useful. So in Dominions 5, he only did 1 more damage because of how strength scaling worked for bows. He only did 1 more damage than the Pygmy did. However, now, I'm sorry, he only did 2 more damage instead of the Pygmy. Because the Pygmy in Dominions 5, he did 7 damage on the bow. And in Dominions 5, this one did 9. But now, this one does 8, and the bird archer does 11. The reason this is important is because you have access to both, flaming arrows and poison arrows, and you're going to want different archers for different things. Because the poison requires damage in order to proc, you actually would want to perhaps use these, whereas in Dominions 5, you typically, if you had archers, you would go with the Pygmy. The other consideration with the archers is that the Spider Clan archer, it does not stack, this poison bow does not stack with the poison arrow spells in Enchantment. I tested it. You'll get the icon on the unit, but it doesn't seem to proc when you hit the target. Like it doesn't do a double effect. At least not that I could tell. So there's actually even less use to use these because you can put poison on your other archers. And that's good because, in Dominions 5, was capital only. I mean, it still is in Dominions 6. But, you don't have to build these now off your capital. And you can only get so many in Dominions 5 because they had such a high recruitment point cost. So I think you're going to find yourself not really using these except maybe at the very beginning of the game. But you can get Envenom arrows very early at Enchantment 2. War Lion is unchanged. However, he has 2 new considerations that make them probably more valuable in Dominion 6. First is Dark Vision is more important in Dominion 6 because of the cave layer, and you have another way to get darkness through the glamour spells. Also, you have animal spells buffs that target specifically animals, and finally, you have a mage now that can, thank God, put undisciplined troops into formations and give them orders. So I think this unit will be more useful than it was in Dominions 5 for that reason, at least at the beginning part of the game. Spider Rider has also changed. In Dominions 5, it was 30 gold and 46 recruitment points, which was so much, like you could only make a handful of these out of your capital. Now it's only 25 gold and 24 recruitment points. Also in Dominions 5, you had a first form and then a second form. So when it got hit because it had 0 protection, it would very quickly turn into the second form, which is this. But now, this is not the case. This is now, rider and a mount. So it's like, I don't completely think this unit has benefited from the transition, because previously you would get to keep the spider as part of your army. But now, what ends up happening is, this guy has 0 protection, so he dies pretty quickly if he's hit. Like 50% of the time, arrows will hit the mount instead. And then in melee, they will usually target the mount because there's such a difference in size between the rider and the mount. But you don't really want these in melee. But if they do get in melee, it will usually target the mount, and he has 14 protection. So the rider will usually survive in melee combat for short periods of time. However, with the missile weapons from ranged, 50% of the time it will hit the rider, and 50% of the time it will hit the spider. If a rider is killed, the spider will stick around for the rest of the fight. However, after that, it goes back to the capital, or tries to get a new mount. The problem is, this does not have a smart mount tag, the way some of the other mounts do. So there's a decent chance it will get lost on the way back to the capital and desert. So you won't always get to make these a half price. Even if they all had a 100% chance to get back, it's still only out of your capital, and you would rather have these to stay around in your army because of the web spit. But they are a lot easier to make, and because they're size 7, they can now share a square or allow things to pass through them, a row of these, whereas in Dominions 5 they could not. Because in Dominions 5 they were size 5, so really nothing could share their square. But now, you can have a row of these in the front, and then, your human size infantry can go through their ranks. Same with skeletons. This is more relevant for Middle Age Machaka, where you have the armored, spider knights, but this still does matter somewhat for this unit. Okay, the elephant. Elephants were significantly changed in Dominion 6, not just this one, but all of them. In Dominions 5, the guys on top with the bows, that was purely cosmetic. Now what happens is, the archers will fire as the elephant is moving because they have this tag. But you have to remember, you cannot give hold and fire commands to the archers, because when you give a command to this unit, you're actually giving a command to the elephant rider because he's the first one in this row, and he does not have a ranged weapon. So you can't give an order for them to hold and fire, which would be nice if you could. Instead, the archers are only there, as the elephant is charging forward, which honestly, it's more flavorful than it is impactful to the game, because, sometimes they'll hit, but really, that's not the point. You're buying this for the trample. I think elephants have more utility than they did in Dominions 5, because there's new spells that specifically target mounts and can give them magic resistance and morale. So it makes these a little bit more viable than they were in Dominions 5, where elephants would fall out of fashion pretty quickly because of MR targeting spells. But now there's more ways to keep them alive, and we'll talk about that later. The other consideration is with the elephant, the gold cost is the same, but you have a lot more money than you did in Dominions 5, especially at the beginning of the game. So it's more feasible to make a lot of these for expansion if you wanted to. Okay, moving on to the Lion Warrior. He got a pretty significant change, because in Dominions 5, he had 15 protection. Now, instead, he has 7 protection, but has invulnerability 18. So this, combines for 21. At the beginning of the game, this is excellent. Because, especially against independents for expansion, you're not going to run into independent provinces that have magic weapons. So, the Indies will have a very hard time getting through 21 protection. I think you can very easily expand with Lion Warriors, and they will take very low casualties, because there's very few independent types that can get through 21 protection at the beginning of the game. However, later on, you will have wished that they had 15 protection instead of invulnerability, because they are, invulnerability does not apply to magical attacks. So, this unit becomes far less survivable if the opponent has magic weapons. Now, it is true that in Dominions 6, because magic weapons is now incarnate, you're going to see people probably running it less often. And there's not that many units that have a innate magic weapon. For example, you would have a very hard time against Hinnom because they have a magic weapon troops out of every fort. But a lot of other nations will not have magic weapons unless they take it on their bless. So you do have to consider that in some ways this unit is worse, but I think at the beginning of the game it's far better. The other consideration is they're now size 4. So in Dominions 5, you could only 2 of them would be size 3. They would fill the whole square. Now they have 2 extra spots for something else, to share the square with them. Also, if you take larger, it will go to 5, and they do not lose attack density, whereas in Dominions 5 they would. But that also means now that you cannot do a larger bless to give them increased length on their weapon, because now the length only where is it? Yeah, so it only now, if it's size 6, it gets increased in length. So with a larger bless, you would have to do a further enlargement with the magic in order to get them big enough to get a boost to their length for repelling, if that's relevant to you. Okay, so now we're done with the units. We're going to go on to commanders and mages. Okay, let's jump straight to this one. So, Tide Terrain is a new ability. In Dominions 5, people were always complaining how like it was hard to. People wished that there was a way to give orders to undisciplined troops. I know there was some discussion before Dominion 6 was released that maybe they would give it to units with Beastmaster, but unfortunately that's not the case. So now you have a tight terrain. So not very many nations have this. You're one of the few. I think in Early Age the only other one that has it is Saramashia, but that's a capital only recruiter with bad leadership, while you have these in every fort. So the implications for this are significant. Not only do you have your own units like the War Lion that can be now given commands, like these can be, for example, put on hold and attack rear, and that will give them a way to target. Because they have such high combat speed, they can go around the flanks. It will also give 2 turns for your mages to buff them, whereas in Dominions 5 it was very hard to buff these units because they were too quick. They would move very fast. You had to do very good positioning. Now it's too hard. It was too hard. Now it's very easy. But you also have to consider there's far more implications than just the War Lions. You have lots of summons that will really help. Like, for example, this nation can easily cast Fire Drakes. And, being able to give Fire Drakes orders is excellent. You also have lots of undisciplined independents that you might want to use that you could find. Like, for example, like cavemen, barbarians. There's others. Perhaps even archers that were even easier or cheaper to make than your national archers. So there's lots of potential uses for this that I haven't even really begun to explore completely. So that's the most significant change, and I think you're going to definitely want to have these units, these commanders out and leading instead of researching because of this ability. Okay, this one, he got the additional magic path of Glamour. So it's like a straight buff, arguably, from his version in Dominions 5. This is important for many reasons, and we'll get into that when we talk about the magic. In a magical spells in a later section. The addition of Glamour, I think, will make this unit, like in Dominions 5, you typically didn't build these. They were sidelined by the other mages. Because why would you build this when you could build a Buddha? But now the addition of Glamour definitely gives him more use case to be built. I actually think now that this one is more sidelined because they have these paths already on other mages. So typically I've found that you would rather be building Spider Clan because of the Glamour, or Buddha for all the reasons we already know why this unit is good. And maybe only very occasionally building these if you need a disease healer. Okay, this one also got a significant change. Because, now he also has Glamour, and he has potential Glamour on his randoms. So I did a calculations. In order for you to get Glamour 3, you'd have to roll it twice, so you only have a 4% chance to get 3 Glamour. So you really, really want to put 3 Glamour or more on your Pretender so you can build the booster, because you're not going to really be able to get it on him. I mean, 4% chance on a slow to recruit capital only mage, you're going to roll the entire game and probably never see it. However, Glamour 2 is fairly common because you have 2 independent rolls, and if my math is correct, 36% approximately will be at least 2 Glamour. And this calculation does not take into account the 10%. It's just not even worth considering, in my opinion. But, so approximately, 1 in 3 will be at least 2 glamour, which is important because with 2 glamour you have enough, even without a booster, to cast Twilight and then boost up the glamour for all your mages on the battlefield. You know, the addition of the extra paths, it does dilute the randoms, but I don't think it really matters because you have, you don't care about getting 3 fire on this one because you already have 3 fire on a Lion Queen. Similarly, you don't care about getting 3 death because you have 3 death on a Buddha. You don't care about getting 3 nature because you have 3 nature on a Lion King. So really, if you're rolling this, you only really care about 2 paths, which is Glamour and Earth. Now, you already have Earth, that's true, but why the Earth is important is it gives you access to an Earth Glamour cross path, which you don't otherwise have, because this one doesn't have Earth. You need at least one that has Glamour 2 and Earth 1, so he can later at Construction 7 with a Glamour hat and a Earth boots, he can make a Mirage Crystal, which is the other Glamour booster. Okay, so these two are unchanged, but the only thing I want to comment is that Magic leadership got significantly bumped in Dominion 6, like how much you have. In Dominions 5, sometimes I would take Arcane Finesse, or sorry, Arcane Command, because I wanted to lead around more magical units. But now you have so much on these guys without anything, you probably don't need a Bless, in my opinion. Okay. Very briefly, we're going to talk about the hero. All of these are the same except Lady of Spider. The only difference is that she now has 2 glamour. This is not enough to make a first booster, which is the glamour hat. But it is useful if you get this hero if you're having a really bad luck on your sorcerer and you're not getting an Earth Glamour crosspath. Because with the glamour hat, she can make the Mirage Crystal and you don't have to worry about getting an Earth random on your sorcerer, but you're probably likely going to get one with the way your randoms work. Otherwise, she doesn't really give you anything that you didn't already have. Okay. So now we're going to move into the spells, and I'm going to be talking only about spells that are new or have new relevance to Machaka. And then after that, we're going to talk about some new blesses and perhaps some pretenders. Okay. Okay, so under Conjuration, a couple things I want to focus on is you have a Nest of Salamander and also Nest of Asps. You can cast both of these, especially Salamander is much easier. It makes size 1 snakes. These will fit in with your Lion King, or not your Lion King, your Lion Warriors. But keep in mind that if you're using Rhino Clan, there's 4 to them in a square because of Formation Fighter. They will not have any free spaces for the snakes to share with them if you're trying to have the snakes pass through your lines. So you will have to position them accordingly. Fire Drake we talked about earlier. Because you have a tight reign and you can give these orders and you can have them hold for 2 turns, so they can have buffs placed on them. They're so much more valuable than they are for other nations. So you definitely want to make those. You may even want to consider putting Water Earth on your Pretender so you can make at Construction 5 the Dragon Helm, so you can get 2 Drakes per cast if the mage is wearing it. The Fey summons, we talked about this with other nations that have this cross path. That's less important for your nation because the primary reason to get this is for magic weapons. But you have built-in magic weapon on your sacred, so it's really not as important. Um, so a lot of the summons are more mage turn efficient than they were in Dominions 5. But a lot of them are still not going to really matter because they're still not good, even if you get more of them. But some of them, one of them especially that I wanted to focus on was Leo Gryphs. You get so many more, and because you have, they're on discipline, but you have the commander now that can lead, give them orders, so it gives you a chance to buff them. So you may want to consider them because it's a very mage turn efficient and gem efficient summon. The other one is Chytrionic Lion. Not very many nations can cast this, but you can with the Lion King. It's not mage turn efficient, but keep in mind that now you can, with the Voice of Lion, you can give these orders, and it gives your 2 turns approximately to give them buffs, and they're so much better when they have buffs because it's already a very powerful unit. Cave Kobolds, if you need siege strength, but remember you're only going to have the capital only sorcerer that can cast this because the other witch doctors cannot. One of the things, because the witch doctors have very low paths, so without Twilight there's not going to be a lot of things that they can do in combat, but one of them that they can do without having Twilight is summon sprites. This only requires 1 in each of these, and they all have this, and it's very cheap, and you get 6 sprites that have 20 ammunition each on an elf shot that does 100 fatigue damage to the targets they hit. So it's a very valuable spell to use. And then another one you may want to consider is Fairy Court. This is later game, but if you have either a sorcerer who is extremely lucky and gets 3 glamour, which is unlikely, more likely you're going to have a sorcerer that has 2 glamour and you give him both glamour boosters, and then he can cast Fairy Court, and this will open up new paths in Magic that you do not previously have if you get to the very late game. Okay. Oh, and one more I forgot earlier. Manticore. So this is also now more mage turn efficient because you get 3. So you have several. You could put Earth Boots on either the Lion King or the Lion Queen, and they can both make these, as well as some of the sorcerers. This is definitely better than it was. I mean, these were not undisciplined, but now they're more mage turn efficient, and you're one of the nations that has this cross path. So I would definitely recommend casting them because they're flying, they have fear, they're really good. Okay, so now we're not gonna talk about every possible spell. I'm only making the ones I had notes for because otherwise it'll go on for too long. So under Alteration, you definitely want to get Twilight up, as we talked about earlier. So about approximately 36% of your sorcerers will have 2 glamour, and then they can cast this even without the glamour hat booster. If you're gonna have witch doctors in your army, you're gonna want to try to put Twilight up to give them more utility. Even without Twilight, there's only so many things they can do. Like they can point buff blur, but that's not super useful. You would rather be able to do other buffs in other schools with larger paths of glamour. I don't think you're going to want to put Nightfall up on this nation because Twilight is more valuable. Yes, you have the lions that have the 50% dark vision, but that's not really. It's more valuable to have higher passive glamour than to just have some of your units have a additional combat utility in darkness. Now, if you do choose to go darkness because you have the ability, you have high access to death in your nation to cast darkness. One of the new things you can do is you have cat eye warriors or gift of cat eyes at a lower level. In Dominions 5, you had no way to give dark vision to your troops unless it was on your bless, but now you can. So if you cast dark vision, or I mean darkness under death, it's -6, -6. But now you can cut that to, you can give your troops dark vision 50%, so it will only be -3 for them. If you're doing like heavy skelly spam, because they're not affected by darkness, but you also have living troops that you want to supplement. Furthermore, it gives a reason potentially to do low light vision on your bless, because then your lion warriors and your great lions, which have 50% dark vision, you can give them cat eye warriors, and then they're going to have 100% dark vision, and then they're completely negated from penalties from darkness if you're going to be casting the death darkness. Another new spell that's valuable is there's new combat spells in nature. You have torpor, blood poisoning, and venomous death. Several of your mages can cast these. Especially venomous death is valuable on either the witch doctor with the thistle wand or the sorcerers. Some of them can cast this because it's very high damage and there's no MR check on this 25 poison. Oh, that reminds me, they added one more combat spell. This is new with the new 6.08 patch for Asphodel. So this is a larger version of Tangle Wines, which is great because previously this only existed in mods, but now this is a higher area of effect, and you're gonna have several mages that can cast this. Now it's very low range, but you can, for example, have a Lion King cast this on advance and cast. It's just another way to do slow down your enemies the same way you would do with like Earth Meld, but now it's like for your nature mages to do it. Okay. Under Evocation, one of the ones I wanted to talk about is that now a lot of your death evocations are area effect 1 as opposed to single target. So Shadow Bolt is now AoE 1, Bolt of Unlife, and then Blast on Life is a 2 AoE instead of 1. The reason this is relevant is you have all of your hyena witch doctors have 2 death, and then your Buddhas will have all at least 2 death. Sometimes this would be certain circumstances in which these would be valuable because they're armor negating and they scale. So for example, this one scales, so you could have 4 death with a booster on a Buddha, so this would actually be doing 10 damage armor negating. And this one would do approximately 18 damage armor negating, which to area effect 1, which is extremely high. Now obviously it's MR resistance negates, so you would need to perhaps have penetration items. There's a new one at Construction 3 that's a Astral Earth Crosspath, so if you do find like a Lizard Shaman independent, they can make that. Or you could have it on your bless and give a shroud to them if you have access to Astral. So there are ways to do penetration besides there's some new ways to do penetration, right? So This is extremely powerful spell, especially against thugs or other elite troops that don't have a great MR. So I just wanted to point that out, that even though those spells are not new, they are now AoE. So it's more valuable. The other one I wanted to talk about is False Fire. So, this is one spell that all of your witch doctors can do, even without Twilight. And it's important because it doesn't affect... the false damage does not affect mindless beings. So if you're going to be doing Skelly spam, this friendly fire will not affect your skeletons. Same if you're using Terracotta Warriors, which is common with Early Age Machaka, because you can get a lot of them. It's not going to affect them. Whereas Fireball absolutely would destroy your skeletons from friendly fire. Also, if Twilight is up, it will increase the damage to 16 for them. This is something that all of the witch doctors can do. So, you can give them eagle eyes and then they can shoot out these even without Twilight up. Okay, moving on to construction. So Clockwork Horrors are something I wanted to highlight because you have easy access to Earth on this nation, and this got changed to be more mage turn efficient, and the scaling is better. So what it means now is that if you had an Earth 3 Buddha with Earth Boots, he can make 17 of these per cast. And the reason Clockwork Horror is decent on this nation is because they're size 2. They can fill a square with your Lion Warrior. Yes, Salamander Asps can do the same, but sometimes you'd rather have the Clockwork Horror because, they have all the resistances, they have perfect dark vision, and they have 2 attacks, and they have very high protection for early age. And they recently changed the Clockwork units that now they take fatigue differently than they did in Dominions 5, so they're a little bit more useful, but you're still going to want to forward position them because the battlefield sizes are larger. The other spells to consider here is Temper Armor is available very early. If you cast this on the Lion Warrior, their armor will go to 10, and which then combines with their invulnerability to go to 23, which makes it even harder at the very early game for anything to get through this. You also have the very... they did not have this in Dominions 5. This is battlefield-wide Legions of Steel. Your Buddhas can all... not all of them, but some of them will be Earth 3, or they can wear boots and cast this. This is less valuable for you because most of your troops have no armor or very bad armor. Rhino Clan is the one consideration because they have 10 body armor and 16 on the hat, so go up to 13 and 16. If you're not using a lot of Rhino Clan warriors, it's probably not worth it. As far as items go, some of them that I wanted to highlight was Dreamstone. So, this will make your witch doctors who have a negative research on them, they have a malice on their research, but because they're glamour mages, they can carry this item, which is very gem efficient for how much research it gives you. So you definitely want to make Dreamstones and place them on your witch doctors because then they're very efficient researchers. The other one is, like I talked about, you have, you don't have these paths, but let's say you have an independent or on your pretender. It's worth making a couple of these because it's a new way to get Dragon Mastery. You can also combine it with this Dragon Scepter. So then you could get 3 Flame Drakes, for example, per cast. And, you know, as we talked about earlier, Drakes are very valuable on your nation because of the tight terrain ability. I don't want to go into every possible item because I haven't really used all of them. One more I wanted to highlight is so you can make this this Death Astral Cross Death Glamour Crosspath is not common. This is like a aura that causes false damage. I haven't played around with it a lot to know how good it is. From what testing I have done on the thugs that were carrying this, it does seem powerful, but it's not like as good as Soul Vortex, because you have to consider that they can pass a magic resistance roll for false damage. Okay, moving on to Enchantment. Again, I'm trying to go relatively quickly. Okay, so you have 2 new ways to point buff archers. Ignite Arrows is extremely noticeable, relevant for your pygmies, because you have, this is like a very early Enchantment 2, so you can have a Buddha or one of the other Fire 1 mages with a gem or can do Phoenix Power, and then they can point buff pygmies, because there's 5 of them in a square, to do fire damage. Because, you know, pygmies, you want to give fire arrows because you don't care about doing damage. You just want as many arrows as possible. If you're going to be point buffing this for poison, you would rather give it to your other national archer, the Bird Clan, or independent archers. Because remember, you know, for example, woodsmen are better, they have just as much precision as your Bird Clan, but they're cheaper in recruitment points, and they have armor, whereas the Bird Clan does not. So you can point buff a larger human-sized archer with the Envenom arrows instead. If you do put this on pygmies, it will still get through some of the time, but you're going to rather buff their strength with the earth spells. However, one consideration is that pygmies are very unlikely to do damage to your lion warriors because they have 21 invulnerability. So you can pretty safely fire Envenom arrows with pygmies without having to worry about doing friendly fire to your lion warriors. However, the lion warriors are very vulnerable to now this because, you know, it's magical damage, whereas in Dominions 5 they didn't have invulnerability. The other thing I wanted to mention here is you have access to Death Glamour Crosspath. So you have this, which gives your caster dread. If you wanted to thug out Witch Doctor, he could cast this on himself. There's also a higher version that you can put on the troops. This would especially be good on Rhino Clan because they're densely packed together. Same with the Fire Glamour Crosspath. You have the Aura of Splendor. You know, most nations don't have access to this. Like, I think it's only Ubar and Nabal have it reliably. A couple of others maybe that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. But this is a way to give awe on your troops, and this will stack with the awe on a bless if you put awe on your lion warriors. And they have a lower versions, like a Gift of Splendor. So this gives your another buff that your sorcerers can do, or if Twilight is up, the Witch Doctors can also do it. This is a new spell. So they added several spells that are ways to get remote patrol strength. I haven't really I'm not far enough in my competitive multiplayer game to have used this yet, so I am not sure exactly how valuable this will be. But it is a way, like you don't have blood, uh, you don't have blood access on this nation to do blood hunting. But uh, if you were to get blood somehow or take it on your pretender, this would be one way to have very high patrol strength for gems if you wanted to do it that way. Also, if somebody casts, let's say, Monster Boar on you, you could patrol it out with this. I'm sure there's other things that I could not thinking of off the top of my head. If there's like a spy or a other stealthy unit with the leper stick, the one that causes the Reaper ability in death. I forgot the name of it off the top of my head, but that's another way to get rid of it. So there are uses to this. I just haven't really thought of all of them, the full considerations of this spell. You also have weapons of sharpness point buff that you didn't have before. Because you have easy access to Earth in this nation, and you have formation fighter troops, this is a way to give the Rhino clan AP damage, and they already do much higher damage than regular spears. They do 17 damage because they have good strength, and their spear has a more strength than a normal spear. Okay, and then, all right, moving on to, oh wait, no. Sorry, I'm looking at my notes. So Proud Steed, this is available very early. You can point buff mounts. This is especially relevant on an elephant because it will give it, defense, not as important, it's a trampler, but the +2 morale and plus MR is very valuable because then it will have, especially if it's leading by a Beastmaster, it's going to have very high morale, and then it will go up to 9 magic resistance, which is very, it's decent for an animal, because you don't have access to Astral to do Spell Ward. So this is a way, if you're going to use elephants, in the middle and later game, you would definitely want to buff them, and then you have a higher version here that's AoE. Also, group regeneration is new. It's like a smaller AoE without gem. This could be valuable on animals that you're going to be summoning because you can hold an attack with the tight rain commander. So you can, a lot of animals, summons have high HP, but they have low protection. So they'll benefit from regeneration. And this, you can target more of them with this. Okay, okay, moving on to Thaumaturgy now. So there's several spells that you really wouldn't consider Thaumaturgy that much in Dominions 5 for Machaka, but now I think it's a very viable school to go down for several reasons. So first, you have very easy access to fire. You have Battle Fury, Furious Warriors, and Gift of the Furies. You can cast all of these easily. It gives attack strength. This is especially valuable on a Rhino clan because they're densely packed together and they have a very good spear at 17 damage, but they have bad attack because the spear has a -1, so they have a base of 9, which is not very good. If you cast this on them, it makes them go up to 11 before experience, which is respectable. It makes them much more valuable. This is also useful on the Lion Warrior because they have a length 2 club, so this will increase their attack to 15 before experience, so they can repel swords and like other axes and stuff like that. The other one to consider is the nature equivalent, which is Beast Fury, Ferocity, and Pack Ferocity. This is the same thing as the fire one, but only targets animals. So like you have the recruitable Great Lion. This will go up to 15 attack, and they have 2 attacks. But really the more relevant point of this is on all the summons that have all your animal summons that you can now give orders to with tight rein on the Voice of Lion. It gives you time to buff them with the pack ferocity. Okay, and then glamour. You had no astral in Dominions 5 on your nation, but now you have glamour, so you can give luck to your troops. So the point buff luck is very valuable on the Rhino clan since they're packed together. Also the pygmies, pygmies have basically no protection. They die like to everything, but you can point buff pygmies so they stay alive, so they can use their flaming arrows or their poison arrows better. You could also put on an elephant, to keep the trampler alive longer, but keep in mind that he's going to have 1,000,000 afflictions at the end of it, even if the luck keeps him alive. You have the larger version at group luck. In order for you to do this reliably, besides your capital mage, you're going to have Twilight up, so your lower level mages can do this. This is also valuable on a animals summons, because again, a lot of the animal summons are going to have low protection but good HP, so you're going to want to put this on them in addition to pack ferocity and group regeneration. So I would say that group regeneration, group luck, and pack ferocity are the 3 buffs you want to put on animals if you're going to use a Voice of Lion to give them orders so they have time to get buffed. Trying to think if there's anything else that's really worth discussing. Just double checking my notes. No, not really. Okay, so now let's talk briefly about blesses. I'm only going to talk about new blesses, or those that have changed. A lot of the new weapon blesses, you only have 1 sacred that has 1 attack. It's probably not worth it. Like, are you really going to spend all these points to get vampiric weapons for your Lion Warriors? Probably not. I think some that are worth considering is Awe is now, Glamour Fire Crosspath, and it's +3 instead of +1 in Dominions 5. This is good because you can also give the Glamour Fire Awe buffs as well. So your Lion Warriors could have +5 Awe, which will help keep them alive, because their invulnerability is going to be less useful as the game goes on. You could also consider pairing your Awe with Dread or with Awareness, because then it will reduce the number of times they get hit, so they get harassed less with the Awareness. And then the Awe paired with Dread, because Awe and Fear effects are very valuable in conjunction with each other. Heroism is also another one you can consider for them, because as they gain attack with the length 2 weapon, it makes them even better to repel, and then you have a way to give them the fire attack boosts under Thaumaturgy that we just discussed. So you could have them with a very high attack score, which is even better for repelling to keep them alive. And then Enchanted Blood might also be worth it, because this is a new bless, because it gives them passive regeneration on top of the regen that you can already put on them because you are a nature heavy nation, so you can easily put regeneration on them, and then this will give additional +1 every other round. I'm sure there's some other ones I haven't really considered, but I don't think you're going to want to necessarily have a Hell Bless on them, but these are a couple that I highlighted. As far as pretenders, I don't think you need an expander, but I did want to highlight that this is chassis got significantly changed from Dominions 5, because now this is one of the best expanders in the game and you have access to it. I think you can expand fine between elephants and lion warriors, but if you do decide you want to have some assistance, you can use him as a very valuable expander, especially if you're not comfortable yet with this national troops. Okay, I think that's everything for now. I don't want to go on forever. If I missed anything, please, or you have any corrections, please put it in the comments. And thank you very much for listening to my video.